Fujifilm X-T200 was the first camera I ever reviewed. That video did pretty well despite it being marred by a very buggy audio plugin called Alex something along those lines. But anyway, I'll link that video above if you want to check it out and compare it to this video, which revisits the very same camera in a post-lockdown world that now includes good autofocus as a standard feature on all Fujifilm cameras and a slightly less athletic version of me. But that's not something I was dwelling on at all, on any level whatsoever. Though I'll tell you what was, and it's how capable this camera still is in 2024. Truthfully, that's the case for most cameras released over the past 5 years, and if your focus isn't on prints or high-speed coverage, if you get a camera that's 10 or 20 years back, considering the fact that apps like Instagram and TikTok tap out once you get to a whopping 3 megapixels. But that's a topic for another video. Because today, we're talking about this thing. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna hit you with a wall of text about what it's like owning and shooting this thing over the past couple of years, and then I'm gonna take on a photo shoot with my friend Carolyn, who was rocking the Palestinian keffiyeh that day, while we gallivant around the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. The Capitol building, for those who don't know, is where our genocide-loving racist politicians in the United States join hands to line their pockets with foreign money and use US taxpayer money to help the Zionist state of Israel carry out a genocide against Palestinian civilians while they attempt to ethnically cleanse them off their land. No strobes or anything, despite me loving strobes, just so you can see how someone would use this camera as a newbie. I used a few different lenses during the photo shoot, and I'll talk about those while we're going over the footage from there, but when I do, I will also switch over to this camera so you can see what the image quality looks like for video as well. And I'll be shooting it on the 1545 kit lens that you see here. To give you a quick high-level overview of why this thing even exists, let me take you back to 2019. Where camera manufacturers were losing out to cell phones more than they ever had before, specifically their point-and-shoot categories and entry-level DSLR mirrorless cameras that historically made up the bulk of their sales. Fuji decided to make a successor to the X-T100 that to this day still has a super weird cult following, and that took shape in the form of the X-T200. I have to imagine that the way they thought they'd be able to nab smartphone shooters and introduce them to their first digital camera was to release the same camera, but with the largest, brightest, sharpest, and best screen of any camera ever in the history of time at any price point, and then later just decide to never use this camera on anything else ever again. Now, the nerd stuff, 24 megapixels, a Bayer sensor instead of an X-Trans, some functionality compromises to not overwhelm new users, which I still don't agree with personally, especially being able to customize the autofocus setting, like that's a weird thing to take out. And of course, the X-mount itself. Fuji always has like a kit lens variation. Instead of the 1855, this one came with the 1545, a power zoom lens, because they were trying to kind of give video shooters that smooth zooming. It's pretty decent. It's a plastic lens, but the image quality is pretty good, and it takes the package's value proposition through the roof, especially if you find it on the secondhand market. Base ISO is 200 for photo and 400 for video with a max shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. So if you plan on shooting wide open, you might want to carry around an ND filter with you, especially if you're going to be using one of the faster primes. Or, alternatively, just stop the lens down in all honesty. Same thing for video shooters. You can just ramp up the shutter speed if you're just using this to get better quality phone footage. But if you do want to add that little layer of finesse and follow the 180 shutter rule, pick up a small ND filter and keep it on your person. It's good practice anyway. This was a quirky little fella back when it came out, and in 2024 it's even more of an oddball. I'm never one to complain about menu systems because I think that's a weird thing to complain about. No matter what camera you use, you're going to eventually get used to the menu system. That's it. That should be the end of all menu system discussions. Too many options or settings for file types and codecs? Set it to what you use and then move on with your life. It's such a weird thing to focus on, I swear. Now that being said, the menu setting on the X-T200 is kind of incomplete. For example, movie and photo ISO are two separate settings, which absolutely has its pros, of course, but it's kind of weird setting it up on this thing. The default settings on the custom button mapping, specifically for this style right here, makes it look like there are only two options, and the default one's pretty cool. It allows you to swap film sims and you get like an image preview, and then the second one is just none. If you look closely at the top corner, or if you accidentally hit a button, it'll take you to the rest of the mappable options. I don't know why they opted to put it this way. It feels like kind of an afterthought, or maybe it was an incomplete menu system and they just put the new film simulation preview like on page 4 and didn't think anything of it. For the longest time, a lot of us thought that you couldn't map ISO to this dial here, and I mean, it's Fujifilm, known for their dials. So it was weird. The other thing I don't like is that you lose even more assignability when you're in video mode, forcing you to go with the movie ISO on one of the back buttons right here, and one of the dials are just unassignable and largely useless. But when I start bringing up points like this, I remember that this camera was not made for someone like me. It was designed for someone new to cameras. Truth be told, had the X-T4 been out and we knew it had a flip screen, it's unlikely I ever would have picked this thing up. For me, it provided a solution in that I now had a flip screen instead of mounting a funky little mirror to the hot shoe or using an external monitor if I wanted to record myself while using my X-T3. Real quick, if you like this video so far, hit the like button and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what else you'd like me to cover. Also worth noting is that this camera has Fuji's excellent 1080p video, which I still maintain is the best 1080p video on the market to date. You can shoot that up to 30 minutes. 4K video has a 15-minute limit, but it does go up to 30 FPS. The X-T100, for those who remember, went to 15 frames per second in 4K, which is super weird unless you're going for like some really oddly stylized video that isn't useful for anything else. I also wanted to note that if you check out the original video I made on this, a lot of people in the comments who were in India or Thailand said that the camera did overheat on them when shooting in 4K. So please note, if you live somewhere with similar climates to either Thailand or India, essentially just the hotter weather is a lot hotter than DC, then just note that maybe this is not the camera for you. If you're planning on shooting video, I've never heard of a camera overheating with photos, but I just want to put that asterisk there because that's not an issue that I came across since I don't deal with that climate generally. The kit lens, if you opt to get it with the kit lens, offers you a standard field of view. It's about 20 millimeters. Most cell phone selfie cams are between 18 and 22 millimeters. Also, when you're shooting vertical video and you have a wider lens mounted, it kind of opens up the world to those around you, almost like a GoPro, but very high quality. This camera was also a first with things like a skin softening filter, the aggressive gyro stabilization for video, all of which were new and all work pretty well. Also, just a quick note for social content shooters, because I am going to reference this a lot. I feel like a lot of people don't know that since this is simple H.264 video, you can pop it out, load it onto your phone just by connecting with really any SD card reader. This is the one I normally carry around just because it's got a CFast built in and I'm not buying any more SD card readers. And then you load it onto your phone. You can edit in CapCut or whatever app you feel like editing in, then just post within seconds. The same thing goes for images. You can actually shoot and then load even your RAWs onto your phone, and then you can go into your editor of choice. I use the Photoshop app. I know a lot of people have presets and they have a workflow set up with Lightroom, and that gives you an on-site mobile workflow that's unmatched, especially with such a light camera. Also worth noting, you might say, what about the wireless app? This does still have functionality on Fuji's old wireless app. It did not carry over to the new one, but I generally just don't like wireless transfer anyway. It's kind of finicky, especially in crowded areas. And the security of having a cable to just attach and go is not only faster, but you're never worried about things dropping off in the middle of a transfer. Okay, now it's time to get into the fun stuff, and that is, of course, the image quality. Right off the bat, this entry-level forgotten Fuji camera is better than any other manufacturer's APS-C camera by a far margin in the image quality department. You know, yeah, they're a little better when it comes to autofocus and stuff, especially these days. But why is that? Because unlike every other manufacturer, Fuji's APS-C glass is actually good. Every other manufacturer's APS-C line is an afterthought made to get sales. It's a cash grab. They're trying to hook people in at a lower price point and then nudge people who want to take things up a notch later to spend the big bucks on their full frame line. That's literally it. There's nothing more to it. Fuji's worst glass is better than every other manufacturer's best APS-C lens, and I will die on that hill. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there aren't better sensors and better processors out there, but very much like how old film cameras are essentially glorified light boxes, these newer cameras and sensors do have a lot of technical differences that you'll notice at the higher end of the spectrum, and that's if you shoot professionally. You would be hard-pressed to find a single person who isn't a massive nerd like you are if you're still watching this video, who knows whether the photo you just posted was taken on a $500 or $5,000 camera. So on the shoot with Carolyn, I used the 1655, which you can find used anywhere for 500 bucks. And in truth, that lens deserves its own video. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to make one on that. But I also used the excellent 33mm f1.4 and my favorite portrait lens of all time, the 50mm f1. I edited the photos the same way I would edit any photo I've taken and had absolutely no issues despite the garbage lighting we had to deal with that day. That's enough yapping out of me. I'm going to switch over to video on this thing right now. Oop, got to plug in my microphone too. And then I'm going to grab my little keyboard and we're going to take a look at the photo shoot together, go over some of the images, the image quality, maybe some of the challenging lighting, and the things that I do like about the image quality and maybe some of the things I don't like because my memory is horrible and I can't remember anything right now. Okay, we are now on the X-T200 and I just realized this chair was right next to me the entire video. So yeah, enjoy that. Let's see if I can find a nice little place for it. Now I'm shooting this in the stock profile. I am a little overexposed. I should probably take this light down. It clearly looks a lot better than the Sony ZV-1 I was using to shoot the majority of this video. And the autofocus, I'm leaving it on face and eye detect so you can see if it loses me or not. I feel like with the more modern lenses, I don't really have that problem. But the older lenses like the 16mm 1.4, if I'm not sitting straight, even with continuous autofocus, it will lose me. Especially if like I start moving in and out, even at a slower speed. This one might lose me here. Looking at the screen, it looks like it's sticking with me. But I really don't like the fact that I can't customize the autofocus speed, because with my X-T3, even before the first big Kaizen update, I just adjusted the speed and I never had any problems. And like, I shoot sports, tracking and everything, and it was fine. Again though, probably not the highest priority for someone who's going to be looking at this camera to buy. I yap quite a bit, so let's just get into looking at the photo shoot. Okay, so it was really harsh. We took a few photos before this, but it was harsh lighting, and they were kind of like not the best examples. You can take a look over here. All I did for colors was just removed a lot of the blue, raised some of the shadows to even up on her face a little bit. And I'm gonna punch in. You can take a look at the details. I am guilty. I am one of those people who edits their photos like film photos, or filmic, give it that filmic quality. But you can see the detail in the keffiyeh, which by the way is a Herbawi keffiyeh. Last textile mill in Palestine that makes them end to end. Currently sold out, but you know, get on the pre-order list. You get some cool ones. I'm eyeing the Irish Palestinian one myself right now. And the dynamic range, this one was shot with a 50mm, with the 33mm. Like, the images are just good images. I'm a strong believer, even historically, even with film cameras, you have good glass, your images are gonna come out good. 33mm f1.4 is actually slowly edging out my 50 f1 as potentially my favorite portrait lens, but when it gets dark outside or when we're in a really wide field, the 50 just kills it. We found this little like black bench area, which would be great for Halloween shoots, and decided to play around with it a little bit. Here you can see we framed her in these weird little separation bars. I don't know what the design idea was behind that thing, but it worked for us for this photo shoot. Another framing shot, this one just trying to get her face out of the light. And then after that, like I said, lighting was really difficult that day, but then we started using it to our advantage. She moved to the back here and took, we got this shot out of it. I'm a big fan. Reduce the blues, maybe a little bit of the reds on this one, add a little grain. And this shot's probably gonna be the thumbnail for this video. I guess we'll find out. Like, if you're going out just taking photos of friends, family, and loved ones, it's a good camera because it's so cheap. That's really what it comes down to. It's just going to be, you can find these things used right now for 300 bucks. If you look on eBay, some of the collector ones are like $1,000 because of Fuji's famous supply chain issues. Now here's another shot right in front of the Capitol building. This might, actually, maybe this one should be the thumbnail. The details on the shot are pretty good. She was totally in the shadows on this one, and I did lift the shadows. I feel like I did lose a little bit of depth on this. That being said, I don't know if like the XH2S or the X-T5 would have done any better in trying to recover something like that. This was a big stop sign, like a barricade right in front of the building, and that just kind of felt right. And we got a second shot of it right here, maybe a slightly more direct message. And again, punching in, I punch in on a lot of these shots because 24 megapixels, in the age of 45, 50, 100 megapixel cameras, 24 really is a lot. We went to the other side and we found this wall. It's thankfully all shaded, so it was a lot easier to work with this lighting. And this is where the camera really does shine, since you're not fighting the light. You can just focus on composition for some of these shots. This shot was great because these dead vines, leaves, whatever they are, the detail was kept really well on a crop in. And this is still with the 33 f1. Which lens is that? I can't even see. Oh, that's the 50 f1. Okay. Yeah, 50 f1, razor thin separation, good autofocus on pretty much any camera it's on. I love that lens. Took a top-down shot from here. You know, we enjoyed that favorable lighting while we still had access to it. And then here's the really high contrast lighting. Warmed up the image a little bit, did the standard edits again. This is the Botanical Garden, really worth a visit if you ever visit DC. Although the funny thing about this one is that they actually came out and stopped us and said that this is like too much equipment for a professional photo shoot. And I'm literally just a guy making a YouTube video. And it's the X-T200. It's like the least professional camera I've owned in the last 10 years. Great shot. We got more comfortable throughout the day. It was kind of cold, as you can tell by the coat. But we made it work. And this is the first time I managed to actually stretch my legs in a couple of months. So this shot, I took it, not favorable lighting, but it was a good place to see how the highlight roll-off was, since that is kind of the biggest difference I find in better sensors versus worse sensors. I'm gonna say that this is not as good as a lot of the more modern cameras, but it's still fairly pleasing. Like, it's not jarring, it's not like suddenly it's hot and suddenly it's completely dark and you lost all details or anything like that, like you would on your cell phone if you've ever taken a photo like that where someone is like just super bright and super dark everywhere else. And really, that's just the benefit of having a really good sensor size. And that pretty much wraps it up for this shoot. You got a pretty good idea of what it's like to shoot with this camera with a variety of lenses, and you've got a pretty good idea of what video is like now that you see me here. Let's see if it'll actually lose me. It will lose me. I've got like these caveman eyes, and I gotta tell you, all autofocuses across all platforms do not like these eyes. But it seems to be sticking with me pretty well right now, so thumbs up. So I make this video years later on this oddball camera. The reason is that in the past I was bamboozled by a lot of people on the internet. Now I know them as influencers. But previous YouTube camera channels where they would kind of make you feel like you needed the latest and greatest if you wanted to get ahead. Fujifilm cameras, I will maintain, have the best value proposition across all brands. I'm going to sell this camera soon, but I might do another shoot or two with it. Let me know if you want to see anything else. Reason being is that I tend to, hoard equipment, unfortunately, and it's time to start downsizing. So I want to make this video just to showcase that you can grab pretty much any old camera, maybe a decent lens or two, and you're good to go. If you're doing portraits, especially if you're doing digital content exclusively, you can go pretty far with a camera like this. Now, I'm not saying that if you want to go shoot pro sports or something, this is a great camera to pick up and start doing it right off the bat. I mean, yes, of course the lenses matter, but it would be really weird if I just decided to mount this lens onto it and do a photo shoot. Unless you want to see that video, let me know if you want to see that video before I sell it. I love this lens, it's big chungus. I can do 10 videos on this lens alone because I love it, but it's also frustrating that it exists and nothing else comes close to it in this. If I don't stop myself, I'm just gonna yap for like 40 minutes after this. So this is a good place to end the video. If you want to see anything in particular, let me know and I'll catch you next time.